New ultra simple melon and pumpkin farm for Minecraft Bedrock Edition. This new design is super cheap, easy to build, efficient, and stackable, so you can make it any size you want and get increased rates. If you build this, you'll never need melons or pumpkins ever again. Even if you don't want to eat melons, this farm is still great for villager trading to get a ton of emeralds, and it's also a bone meal farm as well. This might look like any other melon and pumpkin farm that you've seen, but it's actually so much cheaper and less laggier than other designs. So here's my design from a couple of years ago, and you can see that we have an observer looking downwards at every single plant inside the farm, so there is just dozens and dozens of observers every layer, which gets pretty expensive, and then the top of the build is also just covered in redstone dust as well. This means that you do harvest the melons and pumpkins really quickly. However, there's actually no good way to churn off this design without stacking a bunch more redstone on top of it like this, and obviously that's kind of messy. So if you want to stack a bunch of these on top of each other, well, it gets really large and really laggy really quickly. This new design doesn't have any observers or redstone on the entire layer. As you can see, it is just the pistons, and it's actually getting powered by these detector rails here. So every time a hopper minecart goes over top of this system right here, as you can see, all of the pistons are going to get activated, just a couple at a time to reduce lag. And then you also have another hopper minecart going down below this thing to actually pick up your items. So why are we using a hopper minecart on that top layer? Well, because that is the item collection for the layer above it. So this hopper minecart is activating and harvesting the layer below, and it's also collecting the items from the layer above it. So you can get multiple of these in one area, really close together, and to turn off the build, guess what? You simply don't launch the minecarts, and the farm is basically lagless. Now, the entire farm fits within one chunk. It is a 16 by 16 build, so all of your redstone, all of your minecarts, and your entire farm is within that build area. You could, of course, make this a farm even larger if you wanted to, or you can make it smaller to fit your needs. And when it comes to the very top layer of your build, you don't need any of those rails up there, but you can just use a standard redstone line, and that'll save you a ton of resources. So the rates for this farm are really good. You're gonna get about 6,500 items per hour. That is this entire double chest of melons and pumpkins, plus this entire double chest of melons as well, and that gives you about 2,200 items per layer per hour, and of course you can stack up as many layers as you want. So as you can see, this design is much more compact, it's much cheaper to build, and it's also much easier to build than the standard designs. So that's the overview of the build. Let's take a look at how this thing actually works. So we have a basic hopper clock down here with about 2 stacks of items in it. Whenever you unflick the lever, that is going to allow your clock to just resume counting, and then every now and again it is going to fire all of your minecarts. So if we see that happen, as you can see, all of our minecarts are going to get launched, and then we're going to have a bunch of these guys go off and activate all of our pistons. All of our items are going to get collected by the hopper minecarts, of course. Once they're done harvesting everything, they're going to come park back over here and offload all of their items. This farm was completely grown in, so as you can see, they're going to have quite a few items in them, but our hopper minecart's going to give them enough time to offload before it launches them again, and then we just have a simple hopper line going down the side to send all of our items into a storage system. And as you can see, you get an absolute ton of stuff in here. Now, if you want to turn off the build, all you got to do is flick this lever right here. That will pause the build. Now, you're probably wondering how these rail lines work and how does this actually power all of the pistons? Well, we are using detector rails, which when there is a minecart above them, actually emit a redstone power. And as you can see, we can power 3 to 4 pistons that way. This is also powering the powered rail as well, so that's why all these ones are actually turned off. So this is how we can get a really compact, simple, and cheap way of powering this entire system and also collecting the items from layers above. Now, this design could be even more compact if we had the pistons in the floor, and then we just activate them from below, so we would harvest the items and pick them up with one go of the minecart. However, melons and pumpkins don't actually grow onto pistons. They only grow onto, like, grass and other dirt-related things. Of course, melons and pumpkins are mostly used for trading to villagers, so the farmers give you quite a few emeralds for all these things, and you're going to be getting so many emeralds if you use this for villager trading. However, this farm can also be great for bone meal as well. So if you compost like 9 stacks of melon slices, which is also just a stack of melons, that's going to give you roughly 45 bone meal, whereas a stack of melons will give you 7 bone meal. So it is much better to compost the melon slices, and it turns out it's actually better to compost the pumpkin seeds as well. Of course, you can craft 1 pumpkin into 4 seeds, so if you compost 4 stacks of seeds, that gives you 11 bone meal, whereas 1 stack of pumpkins gives you about 6 bone meal, so it's twice the rates. So even if you don't want to trade all these items or use them or eat them for some reason, you can also just send your overflow excess items to a composting array and get a bunch of bone meal out of it. It's actually really convenient. Hey, if you like these kinds of Minecraft tutorials, then drop a like and subscribe, and maybe share around the video. I got more tutorials on the way, but let's hop into the build, starting with the area needed. So it's going to be a 16 by 16 build. Of course, you can make it smaller, you can make it larger. It's very flexible, and you don't necessarily need to chunk align this. However, you know, it's never a bad idea to chunk align, especially because we have minecarts running around. Sometimes they can get deleted on chunk borders. If you don't know how to find chunk borders, you can check out the video linked down below. This build is also going to be 5 blocks above the ground as well. This is for your first layer, so your first rail line is going to be going on the ground. Your pumpkins and melons are going to be growing up right here, and then of course you're going to have your pistons and your rail line or your redstone above it. You might also need to go down underground by a couple of blocks. So the actual farm itself is going to be going inside of this white area right here. That's going to be a 14 by 14 of farmland, and then the actual borders going around this is just going to be for your walls, like your glass, to contain all of your items. And here's the materials list for the build. It's a little bit different this time around, so everything in these top 3 rows is what you'll need per layer of the build. For the very first layer that you build up, you're also going to need all these rail lines for the very bottom of it, and you'll also need either redstone blocks or levers to power your rails down there. Now, you're also going to need all of this redstone, and this is the core redstone for like the hopper clock and the activation and stuff. You only need 1 set of these materials. So how you actually power your first layer is up to you. If you're going to be stacking the build, then of course you're going to need a rail line between your layers there, and if you're not going to be stacking the build, well then you can just use a simple redstone line. So if you only want 1 of these, the build gets even cheaper. So these are the materials that you would need for your redstone line, and these are the materials that you would need for your extra rail line to activate and collect items. Yeah, the materials list is a little bit convoluted, so maybe just grab a bunch of stuff and start building. So we're going to start by building, going into this bottom right area right here, and pop out these 3 blocks. We're going to have in ourselves a double chest for item collection right here, and then a hopper going into the side of it, and then you need a saw block right here, and then we're going to have ourselves our first powered rail with just a bunch of rail going out and starting our loop around the build. So once you have your rails in place, you're going to place in your first powered rail right there, then go to the edge of the farm. Once you get like 3 blocks from the edges, we're going to have another powered rail, and then we're just going to loop this around, and all of our powered rails are going to be lined up just like this, and this is basically exactly how the rails go. It's just going to keep looping back and forth in a big old zigzag. Now, you do actually need to worry about powering these powered rails. Of course, we need to turn them on somehow. The easiest way to do it is just to put yourself a redstone block underneath it. That's a bit expensive, so if you don't want to do that, you can mine down underneath this thing, and then you can put levers on the undersides of all of these blocks right here, and that will power the rails above them. So you can do it either way you want. Of course, the redstone blocks are easier, and that's what I'm going to be using. So I went ahead and put in all the redstone blocks, but these are also the places where you would put a lever underneath the block to actually power these things if you're using levers. So we're just going to continue this zigzag of rails going all the way out. It's basically the exact same process until you get all the way to the end. And then once you get to the very end of the build, you're going to end up with a block right here, like so, and we're just going to place in ourselves another powered rail, and then you can put a lever on the side of that, or if you don't want to, you can just have like 3 powered rails and ignore the lever. So that is your basic rail line in place for the bottom of the build, and that is all of your item collection for the very first layer. So now that our item collection is in place, we're going to place in the pistons. Now, you might be tempted to just place in your dirt floor right now, but our pistons are facing downwards, and to place those in, you need to be crawling. It's kind of just a pain. So we're going to put in the pistons first, starting on the back left corner of the build. This is where your dirt block would be going, and then your first piston would actually be to the side of it, just like this right here. So we're going to have a block in the corner, piston, block, and it's just going to be a straight up checkerboard pattern. It's very easy to build because now you can just walk across the entire build area, and you're going to line yourself up with the edges of your rails. You know what? These two are twisted. Look at that. Rails are being a problem. So if you have that kind of problem, you can just bump this out by a block, and then these ones should be fine. Anyway, rails are stupid. Don't worry about that right now. We are putting in all of the pistons, and again, they need to be lined up with the edges of your rails here. So that is our first row, but we need to fill in this entire area. And again, it's just going to be checkerboarded going all the way across. This step is really easy, so go ahead and fill all these in going across the entire way. So that's what it should look like once all of your pistons are in place. And of course, they're all facing downwards, so it looks pretty nice from the bottom. And now we're going to place in some light sources. You can use pretty much any light source that you want, whether it be shroom lights or jack-o'-lanterns or frog lights. Just simply go ahead and put a lever on it. Make sure that it actually does power the piston underneath it, like all these guys. You cannot use sea lanterns for this because they don't conduct redstone power anymore. And of course, keep in mind that we need to be able to place a rail on top of these. So I'm going to be using jack-o'-lanterns. So we're going to start with this front left corner right here, and we're going to count in by 3 pistons and place in our first jack-o'-lantern right there. And now let's go to the right side. We're going to count in by 3 blocks and then go in by another one right here. And now we're just going to skip 3 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, another pumpkin, 1, 2, 3, and then another pumpkin. And do the same thing on the left side. So in by 3, another pumpkin, and then one more right here. You can put in more light sources if you want. I don't think it really matters too much. And now it's time to determine where you want your water sources to be. That way your farmland actually hydrates and your plants grow up. So we're going to start on the front left corner right here. We're going to go in by 4 blocks. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now this one's actually going to be right beneath a piston. So we're just going to push it a block inwards right here. And now we're going to go to this back left corner, and we're just going to go in by 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and this one should not be underneath a piston, as you can see there. Now, for the back right corner, we're also going to go in by 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. This one is underneath a piston, so just go ahead and move that inwards by a block. And now for the front right corner, we're just going to go in by 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this one is not under a piston. So I can see they're kind of 1 block off from each other, just like this. And that's pretty much how they should be. These 2 are in a row, however, and so are these 2. So now it's just the job of actually going in and placing in all of your dirt. This is actually the easiest part. So we're going to place in basically this entire floor with dirt, but we're going to do it 1 row at a time. So we are going to have a row of dirt on this very back side right here, line up all your pistons. Now, anywhere there's a piston, you cannot plant a plant. So we're just going to, like, till this dirt right here, and then you can start with either pumpkins or melons, but you're going to be alternating rows. So we're going to, you know, plant in pumpkins on this first one, on every single one of these blocks, and then that's really all there is to it. And then you have one on the corner underneath the block there. Now you can place in the next row of dirt, and of course this is going to be a checkerboard pattern, so the next plant is going to be going right here. That's going to be melons, so you plant in all your melons. So that's our first 2 rows in place. You do need to alternate melons and pumpkins every single time. So if your first row is pumpkins, your second row is melons, and then it's pumpkins and melons and pumpkins and melons and pumpkins and melons, all the way down the row, basically. You know how alteration works, right? If you get confused about which row is which, you can simply pick block the plant, and that will give you the seed of it. So this one is pumpkins, and then if we pick block that one, as you can see, it gives us melons. But now, as you can see, we have a few of these rows in place. We've actually completely surrounded this slab that's right here and this slab that's over here. So now you can go ahead and just place in yourself a water bucket that is not going to flow out the bottom of it because that slab is holding it in. So that's actually going to start to hydrate our farmland around here, and you want to do that same one for this guy. And now just keep on filling in the rest of the build. Once you have these ones completely surrounded, then you can go ahead and waterlog those as well. And that's what it should look like once they're all planted in, and of course once they're grown up. But while you're waiting on those things to grow up, we're going to go ahead and place in a little bit of a glass wall going all the way around this thing. This is just going to hold in your items. It's also going to help you see if the farm is running and activating, or if it's like fully grown in or something. Overall, it's just a great idea to be able to see into your build. And now we're going to put in the core redstone for the entire build. So starting right here next to your power rail, we're going to place in ourselves a solid block with a piece of redstone dust. And then we're going to mine out these 8 blocks going to the left over here, just to give you some room to place in yourself a hopper clock and a little bit of redstone going down. We're going to start off with a redstone torch right here, repeater right there, and a redstone dust. Now, if you're using levers to power your rail right here, then of course that's going to be a problem. So you're going to have to remove that lever and then move this rail block over by a block. And then you can power it with a lever from above and just fill it in. So a slight tweak right there, but it shouldn't be an issue for you. So now you can cover up your redstone with a solid block. We're going to need a comparator of 2 blocks apart right here, facing in opposite directions. And then we need a couple of hoppers in between them, and these are facing into each other just like that. You need to crouch in order to do that. Now place in yourself a block right there. We need a piston above it and a piston above this block right here. Solid blocks in front of both of those, and then a redstone block. And now you're just going to go ahead and put in yourself 2 stacks or more of filler items. These can be whatever you want, but you're going to want 2 stacks or so in order to actually harvest your farm every now and again. And your main on-off switch for the entire build is going to be going right here. So just place in yourself a block with a lever right there. And if you turn that off, then that's going to pause your farm, and it's not going to send out your minecarts anymore to harvest anything. So getting back to this corner, you need to put in yourself a solid block above that redstone torch. That way it actually launches your hopper minecart and collects items. And now it's time for you to make a decision. Are you going to be stacking up this build like this demonstration over here? If so, you're going to have to put in yourself a rail line up here. But if you are not stacking this build, then all you need is a little bit of redstone and some repeaters. So if you want a single layer of this design, we're just going to start off right here with a redstone torch. Replace that glass with a solid block, another redstone torch going up, and then a solid block right there. You need a line of redstone dust going all the way across the build right here. That's going to power these entire 3 rows of pistons. And now you want to go to this side. We're going to have a repeater on 4 ticks right here, a solid block right here, and then another line of redstone going all the way across the build. That's going to power these 3 lines of pistons. And I think you get the idea. We're just going to go down the line with this. So another repeater going into the block. This is where your next redstone line would be. So as you can see, it is incredibly simple and very easy to actually power every single piston in this entire build. I'd recommend that you test it real quick. So place down a lever. You should power all of those. It's going to be kind of loud, but you should see absolutely every single one of your pistons are extended. None of your plants should have been destroyed by that unless you lined it up incorrectly. So if you just wanted a single layer of the build, then congratulations, you are actually completely done. If you enjoyed this video, then drop a like, share it around, and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. But if you want to end up stacking this build to double or even triple your rates without that much more work, then stick around and I'll show you how to easily stack this thing up. So to actually stack this thing up and get multiple rail lines in here and make it really compact like this, we need to install our rail line on top of these pistons right here. So we're going to start off by placing just a hopper facing to the side right there. This is going to have your first piece of powered rail where your minecart's actually going to sit and get unloaded. And then we're going to have 6 normal pieces of rails going out. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we're going to start our first little segment of detector rail and then powered rail and the detector rail. This has to be a detector rail, everybody. And that has to be a powered rail. If these are not the right type of rails, your system will not work. So that's our first little segment right there. And then we're going to have another rail and then detector, powered, detector, and it's just going to go around the corner like this and loop back towards the beginning. So we're going to take this line going all the way to the beginning over here, and then we're going to have a detector, powered, and detector, and it's going to go around like this. And this is where it actually starts to get really easy. So we're just basically repeating this entire layout. So we're going to be lined up with this one. It's going to be detector, power, detector, gap, and then detector, power, detector, go around the corner. It's going to go all the way to the end until it's lined up this guy. So detector, power, detector, and then just go around the loop. And I think you kind of get the idea at this point. It's actually not too difficult to build this thing up. So this is what the final layout of rails, detector rails, and powered rails should look like in your build. So go ahead and build this up in your world. And again, it's pretty much that same pattern that I showed you earlier. So once you have that placed in, I would highly recommend that you go ahead and test it before building more of the farm. So place in yourself a minecart right here. We're going to put a lever on it. Go ahead and launch that guy, and we can see that, as you can see, it's just going around the entire build now, and it's going to activate all of those pistons. It's going to harvest everything down below, as you can see right here, looking beautiful. And then, of course, once it hits the end over here, it's just going to go right back around and go back to the beginning. And now to properly finish up the build, you're going to place in yourself a solid block right here, one next to the hopper, and then a redstone dust right here. And because our lever is right there, it's actually redirected. You want the redstone dust to be going in all 4 directions like that. And now we need to actually get these items out of that hopper and send them downwards. So starting at the top, you're going to place in either a decorated pot or a dropper. These are basically just filler blocks that are really cheap to make, and they're basically just replacing a hopper that would be there. So I'm going to use decorated pots. They're super cheap. And then underneath that one, you're going to need a hopper facing straight downwards, another pot, and then another hopper, just going right down the build until it goes into your chest. And then if you want to actually test run this build, you can place a button right there and power that. Both of your guys should go across. They're both going to be collecting items and harvesting things, and you're going to be good to go. And if you want to run the farm normally, then of course, just unflick that lever, and your hopper minecart should start moving items back around, as you can see here. But now you want to build another layer and stack this thing up. Well, good news is you already know exactly how to do everything. So basically, you're just going to pretend like you started right back at this layer with your rail line, and you're gonna go back over to this corner, and you're gonna start placing in your next line of pistons facing straight downwards, and that's pretty much it. The entire build process is identical for each one of these layers. Of course, the very top layer of your build is going to be using that redstone line kind of feature that I showed earlier, and in order to connect together all of these hopper minecarts, as you can see, it's just, you know, hoppers going into droppers or going into pots, and then they just keep on going straight down all the way to your storage system. Keep in mind that each one of these layers produces about 2,200 items per hour, and hoppers can only move about 9,000 items per hour, so you can make 4 of these layers before you max out one hopper line. If you're building a 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th layer, then you're going to have a secondary hopper line going down, probably just like right next to these things, so it would just be kind of like in these areas right here, and then that would be going down into your chest. But at that point, you're probably an advanced user, and you probably know what you're doing. But as you can see, our farm has properly harvested over here, and all of our items have been offloaded. That is just from a single run of this thing. Now, you'll notice that sometimes a couple items get left behind out there. That's perfectly fine. Our farm is activating more than every 5 minutes, so no items are actually going to despawn out of this build. Now, if you notice that a minecart has gotten stuck on this build, that is really easy to fix. You just want to go ahead and build a little bridge, put down yourself a trapdoor, and then swim on in here and just nudge that around a little bit, and it will go back and do its thing properly, and you are good to go. This can happen if you leave the area while the farm is running or while the minecarts are moving. It's kind of uncommon, but you might see it happen. And if you notice that one of your layers just like isn't getting harvested for some reason, that's probably why. If you like this Minecraft tutorial, then of course drop a like, share around the video, and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.